Good afternoon to all. Now I invite the speaker of this session, Shri B. Bakshi, Technical Advisor, Power and Industrial Training in L&T Power Training Institute, Baroda. Yesterday, Sir has given a very beneficial presentation on supercritical and subcritical power plant. Sir, we are very privileged to hear you once again. He will be addressing this session on topic environmental challenges in coal-based thermal power plant. Sir, I request you to kindly deliver your speech.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Good afternoon to everybody. I think this program is very much important for all the participants, and irrespective of the discipline, it is for all the discipline. I think it will be suitable to the topic. And at this era, this topic is very much popular and very much essential and important for our nations, for our all the world, for the global necessary. So I will start this session from very basic. So now I am switching off the video so that I can get the proper bandwidth. Okay, now I will cover this topic: environmental impact of coal-based power plant, the air pollution impact, the air quality control, the challenges in coal-based power plant to control air quality, and water pollution control. Now, environmental pollution by coal-based power plant has the four impact in terms of pollution: air pollution, water pollution, land pollution, and noise pollution. So I will not touch upon the noise pollution. I will discuss the air pollution, water pollution, and land pollution. Now, this is the world coal power scenario by fuel, and the top curve is the coal power plant scenario. It is the highest till now. It is the highest contribution in power generation, global power generation. It is about 40%. Now it has been about 38%, but it increases above 40%. So major contribution in power generation is by coal fuel. And in India, at a glance, the coal-based power plant 52.107% of the total power generation, and 1.7% is the lignite-based coal. As on 31st August 2021, this year. And you know that there are about 174 coal-based power plant, thermal power plant, with total generation capacity is 2,02,204.5 megawatt as on 31st August this year. And more than 622.2 million ton of coal with ash content about 35 to 45% was consumed in 1920. And this year also almost similar, because as of August it is 59,628.2 ton. It is a that means 59 million ton, 50 million ton in a month. So it is roughly similar, about 625, 628 like this. The coal consumption almost similar to 2019 and 20. So this is the coal consumption, and more than 240 million ton per annum coal ash is generated. You see how much coal is generated from in the coal-based power plant. The Indian scenario I am telling. And more than 45,000 hectares of land has been occupied for ash pond or ash dike purpose. All so bottom ash or fly ash, when wet condition we dispose from the plant, these are stored in a large area, which is called the ash pond or ash dike. That total area in India more than 45,000 hectares, and more than 1,050 million meter cube water is required for disposal of the coal ash in slurry form per annum. A huge amount of water is required. So you see, this is another reasons for the water pollution. For ash disposal, huge amount of. Now, environmental impact: use the high ash content coal in power generation leads to the following environmental impact. First, I will explain the environmental impact. The air pollution, water pollution, land pollution, noise pollution, that already told you. Now first let me discuss the air pollution. What is that? Air pollution is the effect of physical change, chemical change and biological change of the natural environment and the ecosystem, and which has the adverse effect in humans and other organisms. These are basically the definition of air pollution. The three types of changes we find: physical. For example, physical change means when the particulate matter, as particle, coal particle will be coming in the air. It will be the physical change. Okay, and a chemical change. Chemical change means suppose the any SO2 or any carbon dioxide, and biological change means any suppose animal skins or cockroach skin that will be coming in the atmosphere air. That is the biological changes. And all three changes has a tremendous impact and adverse effect on humans and other organisms. And then we will say air is polluted. And because this air pollution has significant factor in number of air pollution related disease like respiratory problem, heart related disease, stroke, lung cancer, and so forth. Different various types of disease due to air pollution may occur in human body. Now, the substance which is responsible for causing the air pollution, that is called the air pollutant. Okay, it may be the gaseous, liquid, and solid. These are the very basic, you know, everybody. And this pollutant can be either natural, for example, the wildfire. Many times we find in the forest side there is a fire started. It's called the wildfire. Or synthetic, man-made. We are burning fuel in our car. We are burning fuel in our scooter. We are burning gas in our house. These are man-made. These are the synthetic pollutant, we call it. Now, primary pollutant, and again divided into primary pollutant, which are directly emitted from the combustion of the fossil fuel and injected into atmosphere. In coal-based power plant, from fossil fuel combustion, mainly coal combustion and certain amount of fuel oil combustion, we get the primary pollutant like carbon monoxide, sulfur oxides, oxide for nitrogen, particulate matter like dust, ash, salt particles, volatile organic compound, like carbon dioxides, and emissions from mercury, very little amount. And last but not the least, the fugitive emission from the coal handling plant or ash handling plant. Very fine particles from the coal handling plant or ash particles, ash handling plant. These are basically the primary pollutant from the coal-based power plant. And carbon monoxide, sulfur oxide, or SOx or NOx, these are mainly known as a greenhouse gas. Also, carbon dioxide is also another greenhouse gas. So these are the greenhouse gases generated from the coal-based power plant. The secondary pollutant is when the primary pollutant will be converted to another pollutant, harmful gases, harmful pollutant, that is called the secondary pollutant. For example, the ozone gas. Ozone gas is formed from the nitrogen oxide in presence of light and in ultraviolet light from the sun, and also in presence of the volatile organic compound. So that is the ozone. Sulfur trioxide. Sulfur trioxide is another secondary pollutant. Acid rain, acid formation from SO2 or SO3 in presence of water from the H2SO4. That is the secondary pollutant. So ozone, acid rain, and sulfur trioxide, these are basically the secondary pollutant from the coal-based power plant. Now, ozone formation I already told you, though still here I have written in chemical reaction of nitrogen oxides and volatile organic compound in presence of the sunlight. That is the ozone formation. And ozone is called the photochemical smog, which is the combination of the smoke and fog. Now, if suppose volatile compound not available, in that case, the nitrogen dioxide from the chimney or exhaust from the coal-based power plant will be photolyzed in presence of the solar radiation, and it will produce the nitrogen oxide and an unpaired oxygen atom. The unpaired oxygen atom will react with the oxygen molecule to produce the ozone. If no volatile compound is present, then this nitrogen oxide will be nitrogen dioxide will be dissociated again by nitrogen dioxide and oxygen. Okay, so NOx again it will form. The ozone gas will not be stable. If the volatile compound is present there, this volatile compound will form the nitrogen dioxide from nitrogen oxide. So ozone gas will be stable in presence of volatile compound. Now these are one picture I have collected recently during the lockdown period. What is the scenario? Before lockdown, here you see, before lockdown, it was very high nitrogen NOx pollution, very high. You see the red level. But in case of after March 22, after declaring the lockdown in 2020, you see it is coming down. So because the coal-based power plant or power generation, it has come down, not only in India, worldwide. So these are the one data I have collected from Kolkata. Another is from Mumbai, similar effect. So not only Kolkata, the Mumbai also similar effect, very high during the before just lockdown. After lockdown, it will come down because all the industries closed up, all the power generation come down. So there is the impact in air pollution. Now first I will explain the impact of air pollution. Why we are so concerned to control the air pollution. Now I will discuss the impact of air pollution. The carbon monoxide present in the fossil fuel combustion, it is a harmful for heart disease, chest pain. The nitrogen oxides, it is also come from the coal combustion oil combustion. It is also dangerous for the irritation of the breathing problem, breathing passage. Sulfur dioxide. It also comes from the fossil fuel, coal or oil, and it contribute to form the acid rain, and it has also effect in breathing problem, asthma, and the heart disease. Now, ozone gas. It forms from the nitrogen oxides and volatile organic compound. It has a effect of irritation and inflammation of the breathing passages. And particulate matter. It is an emission from the coal combustion. It has also effect in the aggravation of asthma, irregular heartbeat, and the blockage of the breathing passage. And lead has also fossil fuel combustion. It has also effect on the cardiovascular disease. So these are the mainly the impact of the various pollutant coming from the coal-based power plant in human body. Now, one just report I have collected that in 2019, 1.67 million deaths were attributed due to air pollution in India, and accounting for 17.8% of the total death in the country. So due to air pollution, the death is so much high, 1.67 million. And majority of this death was due to the particulate matter PM 2.5. PM 2.5 means the particulate matter less than 2.5 micron. These are called the PM 2.5. So for this particulate matter particle size, the pollution was very high, and majority death was due to this PM 2.5. Now, annual comprehensive report, as per annual comprehensive report, that in 2020, it was responsible for 6.67 million deaths worldwide. So you see, the air pollution was tremendous impact in the world, in the globally, where 6.6 million. Out of that, 5 lakh babies were premature death. 5 lakh was the baby premature death due to air pollution. And in India, out of 5 lakh, 1,16,000 infant death took place due to air pollution. Used to show the bad impact of the air pollution. Only told this part. Now this is the sector-wise pollution. You see, the industry 21%, transportation 14%. Major contribution in air pollution is due to the electricity generation, power plant, or heat production in the area. So major contribution in air pollution in India is due to the electricity generation or power generation, and that power generation basically the coal-based power generation, because in India the coal-based power plant is a dominating area. So in India, thermal power plant 37.8%. The greenhouse gas, what are the emission in India? The major amount is the 58% from the coal, gas, and oil. But out of that, 37.8% from the thermal power plant. So major amount of air pollution cause is from coal-based power plant or thermal power plant. Now one thing, pollution, air pollution is taking place due to secondary pollutant or primary pollutant. But when we can say the air is not polluted, air is clean, so that's why there is a air quality standard. So pollutant which level is permissible in the air, defined pollutant are there, which level they are allowed in the atmosphere, so that we can say this level is permissible, and up to this level we will not say the air is polluted, or up to this level air will not have any impact in the human body or any organism. So that's why there is a air quality standard. Worldwide air quality standard has been defined to assess the air is polluted. So considering the air quality, there is a one term very popular, National Ambient Air Quality Standard. This is the National Ambient Air Quality Standard. In 1970, it was implemented by Environmental Protection Agency in USA to assess the air quality, to understand the air quality, whether it is polluted or not polluted. So it is mainly for understanding the quality of the air. And this National Ambient Air Quality Standard is pronunciation is a NAQS, NAKS, NAQS. And due to some pollutant, 6 or 8 or 12 pollutant, this quality or NAQS is assessed. So NAQS is based on certain pollutant. What are the pollutant? I will say. In India, this National Ambient Air Quality Standard was implemented in 1982, 11 November. So after 12 years from USA. The number of pollutants which are considered for the National Ambient Air Quality Standard, these are called the criteria air pollutant, to regulate and for use the indicator as the indicator of air quality. So these are called the criteria air pollutant. For example, in USA, this is the carbon monoxide, nitrogen dioxide, sulfur dioxide, lead, and ground level ozone and particulate matter. These are the 6 pollutants which are considered for National Ambient Air Quality Standard in USA, not in India. So 6 pollutants are the criteria air pollutant. In Australia also 6 criteria of air pollutant: carbon monoxide, lead, nitrogen dioxide, ozone, particulate matter, and sulfur dioxide. So these are the 6 also in Australia. In India, it was initially the 8 criteria air pollutant: particulate matter 10, particulate matter 2.5, carbon monoxide, sulfur dioxide, nitrogen dioxide, ammonia, and ground level ozone and lead. These are the 8 criteria pollutant initially India selected to regulate the air quality standard. You see, here for example, the sulfur dioxide. Annual average in industrial area 80 microgram per meter cube. Residential area 60 and sensitive area is 15 microgram per meter cube. So these are the level of this level you can allow. Up to this level, we will not say the air is polluted. Above this level, we can say that air is polluted by sulfur dioxide. If nitrogen oxide is 80%, okay, 80 microgram in similar to sulfur dioxide. Suspended particulate matter, you see here. So 500 initially it was as per 1994 initial. So initially these are the level of defined pollutant in air, and accordingly air quality standard was regulated. So these are the sulfur dioxide, nitrogen oxides, suspended particulate matter, then particulate matter 10, lead, carbon monoxide, ammonia. These 8 pollutants initially considered as the air criteria air pollutant in 1994 in India. In 2009, this criteria pollutant is revised. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So 2009, the air criteria air pollutant were considered 12 instead of 8. There we added the arsenic, nickel, benzene we added, and also benzopyrene. These 4 we added in addition to the 8 previous air criteria air pollutant to assess the Indian air pollution, India air quality, and these are the level of the defined air defined pollutant. Up to this level, we will say air is not polluted. Above this level, we will say it is air is polluted. So this is the criteria air pollutant to regulate or to indicate the whether air is polluted or air is not polluted. So these are air quality standard internationally we follow. Now you see there are 12 pollutants are there. 12 pollutant level are very different. Now for a human being or for general people, common people or layman people, it is very difficult to know all this level or to understand the air quality. Okay, so for common people, for understanding the air pollution, air quality, there is a one term we use, there is the air quality index. Is a tool, okay, for easily communication, for easily understanding whether air is polluted or air is not polluted. So what is the air quality? So by air quality index, it is for the everybody, every people to understand the air quality. The single number, we use a single number and a defined color. And in India, this was implemented in 2014, 17 October. There are 6 air quality categories. One is good, satisfactory, moderately polluted, poor, very poor, severe. These are 6 categories by which anybody can understand the air quality. These are the index. Now, good or satisfactory, how will you understand? By the color. You see, when it is a green color, the air quality index 0 to 50, it is good. When air quality index is a 51 to 100, it is satisfactory. Color is little bit yellow greenish, satisfactory. When 100 to 200 air quality index and color is yellow, it is moderate. When 201 to 300, it is orange, is poor. When 300 to 400 air quality index is a poor. On the deep red, 400 to 500 is a severe polluted. So very easily anybody can understand by this color and by this category and by the simple data, not the complex of the all defined pollutant, the single data. So very easily it is understanding for everybody. Now, how these are the one standard for the total air quality understanding. How it is calculated? For calculation purpose, we select the sub index of the defined pollutant, 8 pollutant, particulate matter 10, particulate matter 2.5, nitrogen oxides, sulfur oxides, carbon monoxide, and ozone. Ammonia and lead. These eight sub pollutant are there where we have designated the sub air quality index. Okay, by the color. You see like this. This is the air quality index for the defined pollutant. Previously, I have shown you the total pollutant air quality index. Now, the air quality index for the individual pollutant. It is also the level is similar: 0 to 50, 51 to 100, 101 to 200. Category and quality, category and color is same. But this is for the individual pollutant. Now, individual pollutant, consider the individual pollutant, and by using the one empirical formula. Empirical formula here I have not mentioned. One empirical formula, by using the empirical formula and with the help of the sub quality air quality index, we can calculate the actual total air quality index. Maybe no, this formula is not available with me as present. So it's a purely empirical formula. So by using the empirical formula with the help of the sub index of the air quality, we can calculate the total air quality index, and accordingly we will assess the air quality. Now, as per the Pollution Control Board, to minimize the pollution and to achieve the air quality as per the NAAQS, the following regulations have been stipulated: Air and Water Air Acts, use of beneficiated or blended coal, emission standard of particulate matter and gaseous emission, stack height requirement, and fly ash utilization. They are basically implemented for the coal-based power plant or any thermal power plant. Now, as per the Pollution Control Board, Central Pollution Control Board, initially 2016 31st December from 2003 1st January, these are the guideline. These are the guideline. The how much will be the level of the particulate matter, how much will be the level of the sulfur dioxide, how much level will be the nitrogen, mercury, everything. So, but 2017, the power plant which has been commissioned after 1st January 2017, they should follow this level. Particle matter 30 microgram per milligram per meter cube, normal meter cube. Sulfur dioxide 100. Initially, sulfur dioxide was 600 or 200 for 500 megawatt. Now it is 100 for all the power plant. Nitrogen oxide also 100. Initially, it was 300. So at presently, the power plant which have been commissioned after January 2017, they have to follow these norms strictly. Now, what are the challenges? What are the challenges we, as a coal-based power plant, we have taken? What are the measures we have taken to control the air pollution? That I will explain. The measures for air pollution control, the coal cleaning, that is a pre-combustion measure in mining. I will explain that part. Second measures during combustion period, by combustion control, by using low NOx coal burner, by using additional air flow, by using the fluidized combustion or CFBC, circulating fluidized combustion, CFBC boiler. Then after combustion, what are the measures we have taken? By NOx control technology, by SOx control technology, NOx control technology, by using ESP for particulate matter control. So these are the measures or challenges we have taken to control the air pollution. So one by one I will explain. In mining site, the coal should be cleaned for removing the or reduction of any extraneous material. With the first step. So this is the action taken before the coal transportation from mining to coal handling plant. Another part is the pre-combustion. Another part is the coal vinification. Coal vinification to remove the any surface dust. It is surface dust, any type of dust. So that also clean the any sulfur, any ash particles, any dust. It clean by washing and vinification. The second part before the coal combustion. So these two cleaning are taking place in mining. And what is the impact of these? I have collected the data in Satpura and Dadri power plant that thermal efficiency it increases 2.8%, and in Dadri it increases 1.2%, and auxiliary power consumption also decreases 0.22% in Satpura and 0.31% in Dadri. Also reduction in breakdown hours. So it decreases 25% in Satpura and 50% in case of Dadri. So these are the effect of coal verifications, coal cleaning, pre-combustion measures. And other part is the environmental CO2, SO2 emission reduction in the flue gas, where the better thermal efficiency we are getting. These are the environmental impact for cleaning the coal before combustion. And also the reduction in land requirement for ash disposal. As the efficiency increases, we have reduced the coal amount. So definitely, as the coal amount decreases, so as formation also decreases, so simultaneously the land requirement also decreases. Now carbon monoxide formation, how it forms, very common, everybody we know. When the incomplete combustion will take place during combustion, then carbon monoxide will form. So now I will explain the how during combustion we can control the air pollution. We are control the different formation of the different pollutant. First is the CO. CO formed due to incomplete combustion. So what is the measures? What is the challenges? The coal-based power plant will take. They need the proper combustion. The combustion is a process of sequential process of drying, heating, pyrolysis, burning of volatile matter, and burning of residual charge. At a glance, we think the coal combustion means that burning the coal, and immediately the coal burning internal all the material will start firing and burning. No. There are internally these are the sequential processes take place inside the coal during combustion. First dry. First the heat will dry the coal. It will remove all the surface moisture from the coal. Then if I heat further, internal moisture, inherent moisture will be removed. Third is the pyrolysis. From the coal, if coal inside there is a volatile matter, hydrogen, methane, so different type of volatile matters are there. If I control the heat, the next process is that coming out the volatile matter from the coal, and that process is called the pyrolysis. After that, at hydrogen, methane, their combustion, the efficiency, their ignition temperature is very high. First, they will burn, starting. So, burning of the volatile matter will start. This point they will burn, they will further increase the temperature of the total coal. Then the charge or carbon particle will start burning. And after the end, at the end, the ash formation. So these are the sequential process of the coal combustion actually happens during coal combustion. Huh?
Class 12 what is it?
It is 5:05.
Huh?
5:05.
ওটা কি হলো বলো একটা
ফোন ধরলো না
আবার আমি কথা বলছি ঠিক আছে
Sorry for interruption. Now, these are the sequential process of the combustion. Now, carbon monoxide formation control only possible by efficient coal combustion. Now, that's why you have to know the operation. That is a purely it is a contribution of the operation engineer. How to burn the coal for proper combustion? What are the factors that affect the coal combustion, complete coal combustion? So that is the important part. First is the air-fuel ratio. We have to maintain properly. The ignition temperature. The particular particle size. Particle size bigger and particle smaller. Bigger size particle will take the more timing. So accordingly, you have to allow the timing. Bigger size particle will take the more, it will require the more ignition temperature. So particle size is a very important part. We maintain the particle size 65 to 70 micron. So that particle size should be maintained. During coal pulverization in the coal-based power plant, this fineness control, coal fineness control is very, very important part. So every maintenance, the maintenance engineer should inspect the coal fineness, and accordingly he will adjust the internal component to control the fineness from 65 to 70 micron. The residence time for combustion of the coal, it needs the proper residence time. If you don't allow the residence time, combustion will not take place. Air and fuel turbulence. You have maintained the air-fuel ratio. You are following the air temperature, ignition temperature. You are following the particle size. You are allowing the residence time, everything. But if the air and fuel are not properly mixed, homogeneous mixture is not formed, then you will not get the proper combustion. So that turbulence is very, very important. Next is the firing system. There are the different types of firing system. One is the very common BHEL, and also L&T Power we use. It is a tangential coal firing system. It's very popular. And Babcock, they follow the horizontal fuel firing system. Horizontal front or rear firing fuel firing system. The firing system, the burner position, coal burner angle is very, very important part. All the for firing system, for corner firing or tangential firing system, coal burner angle, firing angle should be maintained properly, so that the coal firing vortex will be created at the center of the furnace. If any one of the coal burner firing angle changes, then the total flame, the coal fire ball will be shifted from the center to in one side. It will hamper the turbulence of the coal air. So firing system has a tremendous impact or effect in the residence time, in the air fuel turbulence, and also the proper heat transfer, heat distribution. As last but not the least, the furnace draft. The operation engineer during operation, he must observe the furnace draft. Furnace draft means furnace pressure. Generally, we maintain -5 to -10 millimeter of water column furnace pressure. So the operation engineer, if he does not maintain this parameter, this furnace draft properly, then incomplete combustion will take place. How? Now suppose high negative furnace, instead of -10, the -20 millimeter of water column. Suppose that means very negative. That means ID fan is sucking the flue gas very drastically, very quickly. So that's why you are getting the high negative furnace. What will happen? High negative furnace means the coal will not get a proper residence time for burning. Similarly, the furnace is very high. Suppose +10, it will be suppose plus 20, plus 30 millimeter of water column. Totally, it will be an agitation in the furnace. So coal turbulence will be hampered. So furnace depth, either very positive or very negative, you will hamper that combustion tremendously. So that's why furnace depth should be maintained properly. So these are the factors to be maintained properly to achieve the efficient and complete combustion of the coal and to control the carbon monoxide formation, to prevent the carbon monoxide formation. This is the purely the operation engineer's expertise and skill to control the formation of CO. The first measure. Now, a particular matter. Particular matter generally ash formation. Generally ash is divided into two parts. One is the bottom ash, one is the fly ash. Fly ash is fly with the flue gas. It is about 80 to 85%. And bottom ash generally it falls down in the bottom of the boiler, bottom hopper of the boiler. It is about 15 to 20% bottom ash. So accordingly, we'll take the action. The fly ash, how will control? How will prevent the fly ash pollution from fly ash? We use the ESP, electrostatic precipitator, where there are very high voltage DC. Negative and positive plate are there, and due to corona effect, the high voltage high negative plate will discharge the electron, and all the particles will be surrounded by the flue gases, and this electron will impinge the gases, particle with gas surrounding gases, and particle will be negatively charged, and then this negatively charged particle will be collected in the positive electrode. So in this way, this is called the corona effect. So by this effect, corona effect, by using the high voltage DC, negative and positive electrode, we can easily collect the ash particle from the flue gas, and we can control the air pollution from the particular matter. But problem is that many times we face the problem, the short circuited of the ESP field short circuited. When hopper after collection of the ash particles in the electrode plate, positive electrode plate, by hammering we collect the ash particle in the hopper below the field. If properly ash disposal not taken place properly, then this ash particle will in the hopper will touch the electrode, and electrode will be short circuited. That problem we face very frequently. In that case, ESP efficiency will be coming down. Otherwise, ESP efficiency is more than 99%. It's a very high efficiency. So almost total ash, fly ash will be collected. And bottom ash, how we manage? We make a slurry by water, and this ash slurry is disposed in a nearby ash dike or ash pond area, so that in both the way the bottom ash and fly ash are controlled, and we control the pollution by the particulate matter in this way. Now sulfur oxide control, how? Sulfur formations are different types of sulfur there in the coal, less than 10%, 40% is the organic sulfur, and inorganic sulfur is the 60%, and 40% the organic sulfur is the mainly matrix formation, hydrocarbon matrix formation, and inorganic sulfur is mainly the loose pyrite, and then seawater sulfate, limestone. They are another source of the sulfur in the coal. Now, by pre-combustion removal, physically cleaning, what I told, the coal beneficiation. The physical cleaning of the coal will remove the 30 to 50% inorganic sulfur. Is the pre-combustion measures. Combustion configuration, fluid bed combustion and circulating fluid bed combustion, CFBC. And second is the gasification combined cycle system, which is known as the integrated gasification combined cycle system. By this way, we can also remove the SO2, SO3. And post-combustion removal is the wet flue gas desulfurization, FGD, 80 to 98%, or in situ sulfur capture to inject certain chemical in the flue gas. That is called the dry solvent injection. By the 4 ways, we can control the SOx, and we can control the air pollution by SOx. The pre-combustion is very common, very already told. By coal beneficiation, coal washing, you can remove the inorganic sulfur. Now, FBC and CFBC boiler. FBC and CFBC boiler, sulfur is present in the coal. How we can remove? There is a one important part. That in CFBC and FBC boiler, you know, we use the limestone in the coal bed. This is the coal bed, or this is the coal bed. Here we use the mainly the coal particles. We use the limestone with the sand particles. And from bottom, we supply the hot air. Okay, and we increase the hot air supply, hot air velocity. At one time, the bed, the mixture of the sand, coal particle, and limestone will be just floating. Okay, that is called the hydrostatic bed. If I increase further the air velocity of the bottom, inside the bed, the air bubble will be formed. Further increasing the air velocity, the bubble will be coming out. And with the bubble, the coal particle will be coming out, limestone particle will be coming out. That is called the bubbling fluidized bed combustion. Now here, limestone, why you use? Limestone is used, what are the sulfur oxide, SO2 or SO3 will form. That will react with the limestone and will form the gypsum. Okay, gypsum. So sulfur oxide, for what amount will be formed, that will be captured by the limestone and will form the gypsum. No SOx will be flowing with the flue gas. So in FBC or CFBC boiler, by using the limestone in coal bed, in the bed, we can remove the, we can capture the SOx from the flue gas. Is a major important part. We can use the coal-based power plant, but this type of Can you please mute yourself, please? Can you mute yourself, please? Oh. Please mute yourself, please. Who has unmuted, please mute yourself. Thank you. Now, by the use of limestone in the coal bed and by using the FBC or CBC boiler, we can control the, we can collect the SOx from the flue gas, and we can control the air pollution. But this boiler is limited mainly for the process for the captive power plant. Okay, this type of boiler you are using. Not using in the power plant, the captive power plant, known as the utility power plant. But still it is the coal-based power plant, coal-based boiler, coal-based power plant. Now, disolvent injection in the flue gas. We inject the hydrated lime in the flue gas, or sodium bicarbonate in the flue gas. Mainly US and Europe, we use in this disolvent injection, and we form the gypsum and we capture the SOx from the flue gas. In India, we don't use the DSI. India, we use mainly the defined process. Is the reaction of the disolvent injection. Now, in India, we have started the use of flue gas desulfurization, FGD, and many old power plant, they are also installing this FGD. FGD are dry system, seawater based and wet limestone based. Very popular, very efficient FGD system is the wet limestone based system. Here we use the limestone slurry. This limestone slurry, there are two methods are there. One is the absorber method by using the absorber. One is the jet bubbling method. So by two way we can capture the SOx from the flue gas. After ESP, we install the FGD system. This is the FGD system after the ESP. Here is we form the limestone slurry, and by pumping, this limestone slurry will be injected on the, here the flue gas will be injected on the flue gas, and this slurry will react with the SOx, and effluent of gypsum will be falling down, and clean flue gas will be coming out from here. So by limestone using slurry, we by injecting the slurry on the flue gas, we can capture the SOx from the flue gas. Or by jet bubbling system. Here is the limestone slurry is there. Here is the flue gas entering, and they are going inside the slurry. Okay, and then flue gas with SOx is going inside, and then coming out with cleaning. No SOx is there. So here the jet bubbling system, we are capturing the SOx from the flue gas. The two way we can remove the SOx from the flue gas. You see the jet bubbling method. The flue gas entering with SOx, Then through this tube, they are going inside the slurry. Inside a slurry. And they are coming out from here without socks. Socks has been captured. They are coming out and they clean. Flue gas without socks is coming out and going to chimney. Is a jet bubbling flue gas desulfurization system. Now I will show one video for FGD.
Are you a finance professional or an accounting student, but not so sure of your...
Now video is visible.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir, video is visible.
Can I play? And it is audible also?
Hi, John here.
Yes, sir.
In this,
Is it audible?
we're going to be
Yes, sir.
looking at
Okay.
flue gas desulfurization. I'll explain to you what flue gas desulfurization is, why it's such an important process for many industrial plants, and then I'll show you exactly how a flue gas desulfurizer works. Flue gas desulfurization, or FGD, is a process used to remove sulfur dioxide from a flue gas stream. If we're burning fossil fuels that contain some sulfur, then we're going to produce sulfur dioxide. Unfortunately, sulfur dioxide, when it mixes with water, makes the water quite acidic. So if we're burning fossil fuels in a power station, for example, or in an industrial plant, and we just allow this sulfur dioxide to be vented to atmosphere, then it may mix with the water in the clouds and form acid rain. Acid rain has a detrimental effect on the environment, and therefore, if possible, we don't want to allow this sulfur dioxide to get into the water or the moisture in the clouds and form acid rain. In order to prevent this occurring, we're going to have a process known as flue gas desulfurization. Flue gas is the gas that comes from a combustion space. In a power station, we'll have a large water tube boiler. We burn the fuel, the sulfur is converted to sulfur dioxide, and it is part of the flue gas or the exhaust gas that exits the boiler. So before we allow this flue gas just to be vented to atmosphere, we're going to treat it in a flue gas cleaning system. And that is this entire grey area that you can see to the left of the boiler on the screen now. We will have machines for removing particulates, such as an electrostatic precipitator or a baghouse. We may have a selective catalytic reducer, which reduces the nitrogen oxide. And we're going to have a flue gas desulfurization process, which removes the sulfur dioxide from the flue gas stream. And by removing the sulfur dioxide, we reduce the chance of producing acid rain. As with many processes involving power stations today and emissions, the use of flue gas desulfurization is closely linked to environmental protection and a growing awareness of the need to protect the environment. But how do we remove sulfur dioxide from the flue gas? The two common designs of flue gas desulfurizer are the wet and dry types. Sulfur dioxide is by nature acidic. So in order to remove it from the flue gas and dispose of it in a safe manner, we're going to need to neutralize the sulfur dioxide gas. To do this, we're going to use an alkaline-based substance to bring the pH level of the sulfur dioxide gas closer to 7, which is neutral. At this point, the gas has been neutralized and can be disposed of. So we need to generate a chemical reaction in order to neutralize the gas, and to do this, we will usually use either lime or limestone. There are other alkaline substances that are often used for flue gas desulfurization, but lime and limestone are some of the most popular. Lime has a pH of about 12, so it is very alkaline. Limestone has a pH level slightly above neutral, so it's going to be somewhere around the 7.5 pH range. By mixing the alkaline limestone or lime with the sulfur dioxide gas, we bring up the pH level of the sulfur dioxide gas and bring it closer to 7. Once we've done that, we've neutralized the gas and we can dispose of it by selling it or perhaps sending it to a landfill site. So let's now take a look at a flue gas desulfurizer. Now I mentioned before that a flue gas desulfurization process is usually either wet or dry. We're going to take a look at a wet desulfurizer, also known as a sulfur dioxide scrubber. The alternative to a wet scrubber is a dry scrubber, but we're going to cover dry scrubbers in another video. So here we have our wet flue gas desulfurizer. It may be quite large, it may be perhaps 10, 20, 30 meters in height. It's usually located next to the stack or chimney of the power station, or if you have a large industrial plant that produces a lot of sulfur dioxide, then you will have a sulfur dioxide scrubber as well. If you ever read up on the literature concerning sulfur dioxide, you'll often see it abbreviated as SO2, which is its chemical notation. So let's do a spin of the scrubber so we can have a look around. You can see we've got some pumps located at the base of the tower. We've got a discharge duct at the top of the tower. And if we come to the left side over here, we've actually got an inlet. And that inlet is from our water tube boiler, where the flue gas is originally coming from. I'm assuming here that this example is used for a coal-fired power station, which was our original design. The tower itself is called an absorber tower, and the whole flue gas desulfurization process is going to occur in the tower. Sometimes you can split the process off into several different parts, but in this example, the entire tower forms and houses the whole FGD process. Let's go inside the tower for a moment so we can see some of the other components. We can see that our pumps are drawing from the base of the tower. They're going to be drawing through these mesh filters here. We've also got another hole over here, which we can use to draw out the product that lays in the base of the tower, which we're going to talk about in a moment. We've got some agitators. These are similar to little propellers that are going to stir up everything that's in the base of the tower. And if we go a little bit further over, we can actually see some nozzles coming in. Another one here, another one over here. And those are used to blow compressed air into the tower. I think that more or less covers the lower part of the tower. Let's continue going up the tower. We've got a perforated tray at this level around here. We've got some spray nozzles and some spray headers. That's represented by this spray header over here and another one here. And we've actually got one here. And all of these spray headers and spray nozzles and branches, they form the spray deck. Go further up, we have a mist eliminator. This is whole circular section here. And then we have the discharge at the top of the tower. So let me explain to you exactly how this whole tower works. Flue gas exits the water tube boiler and comes through this duct here and enters the tower. We're now inside the tower. The flue gas temperature may be quite hot. It's definitely going to be in excess of 150 degrees Celsius roughly, which is about 300 degrees Fahrenheit. The lower third of the tower, from approximately this line about here, going across, and everything below, is full of an alkaline-based slurry. This is essentially where we've taken limestone, we've ground it up, and we've mixed it with water to produce a slurry. And the lower third of the tower is known as the effluent holding tank, or EHT for short. So we're going to maintain in this area our alkaline-based slurry, and we're going to use that alkaline slurry to neutralize our sulfur dioxide. We can suck the alkaline slurry through any of these 5 pumps, and we're going to send it to a centrifugal pump. We can actually see this entire pump here. This is a centrifugal pump. And if we go up then, we're going to discharge the alkaline slurry to any one of these spray headers. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different levels, and those 5 levels form our spray deck. We will then send the slurry along here, for example. It branches out and then comes out of our spray nozzles. See them here, that is a spray nozzle. Another one over here. We spray the alkaline slurry all across this entire area, all of this perforated tray area. Let me see if I can just show you that in better detail. You can see we've got the holes. The gas would come up through these holes. It would bubble up past the slurry because we actually have the slurry spread out across this whole area. As it bubbles up through the slurry, we're actually going to get quite a frothy mixture of slurry and nitrogen gas, or slurry and flue gas. And as the sulfur dioxide comes into contact with that slurry, it's going to be readily absorbed by the water. So it's the water that is absorbing the sulfur dioxide. When we absorb the sulfur dioxide, we still need to neutralize it. Remember, if we just were spraying water in here, the only thing we'd get is acid rain because the sulfur dioxide would mix with the water. But because we have a slurry mixture and we're using the limestone, which is alkaline based, then we are neutralizing the sulfur dioxide. So the water will absorb the sulfur dioxide, but it is the alkaline base of the limestone that is going to neutralize that sulfur dioxide. In the lower parts of the tower, we may be working in pH ranges of, let's say, 3 to 4 pH. And as we move up through the tower, we're going to raise the pH as the gas flows upwards. And by the time the flue gas has risen up through the tower, our alkaline-based slurry will probably be closer to 6.5 on the pH scale. So the alkaline slurry is going to drop down, and it's going to drop back down into our effluent holding tank. Some of our alkaline-based slurry is going to be carried upwards by the flue gas. Now, in order to prevent our slurry being drawn up and out of our scrubber, we're going to have a demister, also called a mist eliminator. And that is this entire piece, and it is chevron shaped. And as the flue gas passes up through this chevron shaped mist eliminator, we're going to get this slurry, which has been carried over by the flue gas, collecting on the surfaces of our mist eliminator, and it will then drop back down past the spray nozzles, past the perforated deck, and into our effluent holding tank area again. So in this way, we can reduce our losses by reducing the slurry carryover and returning it to the lower third of our absorber tower. Not only that, but we also protect the ductwork and any machinery that may be downstream from abrasion and corrosion. Remember that the environment within the flue gas desulfurizer absorber tower is actually quite corrosive, and that's why we need to manufacture all of the materials in this space from very durable materials. They'll often be carbon steel, for example, rubber lined or ceramic lined, or maybe a lot of the materials will be manufactured from stainless steel, depending on how much money you have in the budget. So we've now effectively neutralized our sulfur dioxide gases by bringing the pH level closer up to 7. When we neutralized the sulfur dioxide gases, what we actually produced in the slurry was calcium sulfite. Calcium sulfite, which is CaSO3, can be turned into calcium sulfate, which is CaSO4.
I think it is clear to everybody. I know no need further classification, the FGD system. So I am now going to the next topic. So this is the working principle of absorber type FGD. What we use, wet absorber type FGD, what we use in power plant. Now NOx control. NOx in coal are defined 3 types of. That one is the pyridine, one is the pyrrole, one is the aromatic and amines. So these are the mainly NOx in the coal. And 3 types of NOx formation take place: thermal NOx, prompt NOx, and fuel NOx. Thermal is when the temperature is very high temperature. In that case, the atmospheric air react with the nitrogen, or atmospheric nitrogen react with the oxygen, will form the NOx. This is a prompt. Here also nitrogen oxide form from the atmospheric nitrogen in presence of the oxygen air. And these are fuel NOx. What are the nitrogen present in the fuel? This nitrogen comes out for the fuel during the combustion, and they react with the oxygen and form the nitrogen oxide. And they are the very stable. The fuel NOx is very stable. So three ways the NOx form in during combustion. And in the coal-based power plant, major source of NOx is the fuel NOx. And NOx control during combustion by rebonding, by stage combustions, and by FBC boiler. And post combustion, the injection of the reduction agent, flue gas. And the post combustion, the deintegration of the process. So one by one I explain the control technique. Overfire. Overfire means that after the combustion, there is an additional air part. Additional air part, air supply part is there. That reduces the temperature of the combustion at the last or the end stage of the combustion. Okay, and that control the temperature, below 1000 degrees centigrade. It controls the NOx formation, mainly the thermal NOx formation. Then by low NOx burner, another part. Low NOx burner, here also we supply the transient air. Apart from the combustion air, we also supply a transient air or tertiary air, which also control the temperature during combustion and control the formation of the thermal NOx. The combination of the both, low NOx burner and also by overfire. Reburn is very rare in India. Or next is the SCR or SNCR. SCR means the common is the SCR, where we use the ammonia. By injecting the ammonia in the flue gas, the nitrogen oxide will be dissociated into nitrogen and H2O. That also we have started use in the different power plant. And combination of the low NOx burner and SCR. That is also another step. And combination of the low NOx burner, overfire air and SCR. These three combination. The last one is a very effective to control the NOx formation. And in L&T power project, we are using the last one, the low NOx burner, the overfire air, and the SCR. We are using to control the 95% about the NOx control. This is the special burner, advanced combustion technology. Here we are using the additional air supply. Here is the initial combustion will take place, but combustion will not be completed. Incomplete combustion. And in incomplete combustion, during incomplete combustion, the hydrocarbon, certain hydrocarbon will form from the volatile matter or from the coal. this hydrocarbon will burn at this zone by additional air supply. Okay, so total full complete combustion will take place at this additional air zone, complete combustion zone. This is the advanced combustion technology to control the NOx formation and complete combustion and control the temperature of the. By this way, we are completing the combustion, as well as we are also controlling the temperature to control the thermal NOx. These are the steps. What I told, these are the steps to control the NOx formation by the advanced combustion technology. This is the additional airport. These are located here, additional airport. We supply the additional air, apart from the combustion air, we supply additional air by this airport. And using the FBC and CFBC boiler, here we can also control the NOx formation. How? We control the temperature of the bed. The NOx, mainly the thermal NOx form at the high temperature, 1300 degree or 1400 degree, 1200 degree centigrade temperature. Here we control the bed temperature maximum 950 degrees centigrade. So by controlling the bed core temperature in FBC and CFBC boiler, we can control the thermal NOx formation. So CFBC or FBC boiler is very important to control both the SOx and NOx. SOx controlled by using the limestone and NOx controlled by controlling the bed temperature by 950 degrees centigrade, not more than that. Now, as per the Pollution Control Board, what should be the stack height? There is one guideline is there. For proper dispersion of the SO2 emission. This is a guideline. Less than 200 to 210 megawatt, the height you see, the formula is the 14, the quantity of emission to the power 0.3 is the height formula, and less than 200, it is a 220 meter. And 500 and above, it should be 275 meter without FGD. But 500 megawatt and above, with FGD, it should be 100 to 100 meter. In our project, we are installing the FGD in our project, where the initially in our project the chimney height was 275 meter. But presently we are installing FGD. The height has been decreased. It is 100 to 150 meter. There is the guideline. Now, challenges in coal-based power plant. For the water pollution control. Water pollution by cooling water discharge, aspond effluent, fuel oil spillage, lubricating oil and chemical draining or spillage, land pollution, large volume of solid waste generation, fly ash, large land requirement for the wet bottom ash disposal and fly ash, and also the formation of the acid rain. So if we control the SOx formation, definitely the acid rain will be controlled. Also the ozone. So ozone formation, if we control the NOx formation, we can control the ozone formation. So in this way, land pollution can be controlled. Now water pollution, mainly the contamination of the water body by different ways. Mainly the degradation, lead to degradation, define spices, biological communities, define waterborne disease, define contamination or contaminants are there for water pollution. Now here you see the consumption of the water in different area of the coal-based power plant. The ash handling plant is a 2 meter cube per megawatt, cooling tower 1.5 meter cube per megawatt, DM water 0.13, drinking water 0.32, coolant plant 0.065, firefighting 0.37. Total 5 meter cube per megawatt is required. There is the water requirement. Now this is a comparative statement. In subcritical and supercritical power plant, how much water is required? For subcritical power plant, percentage of ash water recovery 0, and the raw water intake meter cube per hour per megawatt is a 4.03 without ash water recovery. But if we recover the water from the ash, it is 70%, then the raw water recovery will be less, 3.33. In supercritical power plant, 0 ash water recovery. Rajpura power plant, the raw water intake will be 3.47 meter cube per megawatt per hour. Why? Because you know, yesterday I told the coal requirement per unit electricity generation in supercritical power plant is lower than that of subcritical. So without ash water recovery, it is almost similar to 70% ash water recovery in case of subcritical. And if I use the 70% ash water recovery, then it will come down from 2.64 meter cube per hour per meter cubic meter per hour per meter per megawatt. So very direct impact in the raw water requirement. I'm not going that part. What type of water we are using? The CW system, the clarified water, heat cycle makeup, the DM water, ascending plant, raw water or clarified water, coolant plant, raw water or clarified water, HVAC makeup water, filter or clarified water, rotable water, potable water. Potable water means for service water system. So potable water is a filter water. Then the potable water also include the drinking water also, and miscellaneous other 0.001%. The total 2.6 per meter cube per hour per megawatt, the water is required in coal-based power plant. Now, what are the challenges? Challenges to control the water pollution, first step is plan consumptive water for minimization. That means to minimize the water consumption. This is the first step. If I can minimize the water consumption, definitely the water discharge, liquid discharge from the plant will be less. So first step, first challenge, first measures is to reduce the water consumption. Next, recycling or reuse the effluent water. And third is the recycling and reuse the sewage water. By 3 ways, we can control the water pollution in coal-based power plant. Now, one by one, I will explain. As per the Ministry of Environment and Forest, their guideline is that from industry, not only power, it is a zero liquid discharge, ZLD is a guideline. No discharge will be allowed. Whatever the contaminated water will be there, effluent water is there, it must be retreated and reused. So no discharge is allowed. And to minimize the water consumption, what are the steps we follow? Heat rate improvement. First step is the heat rate improvement. Second is the by air cooled condenser. Now heat rate improvement, why it will minimize the water consumption? As already told, yesterday and today also I told, heat rate improvement means the steam consumption will be reduced, and steam consumption reduced means the feed water consumption will be reduced. The total water consumption will be reduced. The first step is the heat rate improvement. Second is the air cooled condenser. The condenser, the condensate to condense the steam coming from LP turbine, it requires huge amount of water. Huge amount of water is required. About per kg of steam, it requires about 100 per kg of steam. It requires about 100 kg of water. So, or around 100 kg, 50 to 100 kg water is required per kg of steam condensing. So, if I use the air cooled condenser, we can rapidly minimize the water consumption. Next is the air sanding plant. So, and CW system, cooling tower system makeup. We can reduce the cooling tower makeup water. We can reduce the ash water consumption. One by one, I will explain. And going higher cycle concentration, COC, and dry ash handling system. Now, CT makeup, how we can minimize? CT makeup, CT losses, we know the 3 types of loss are there. Cooling tower, CT means the cooling tower. There are 3 types of loss are there: evaporation, drip loss, and blowdown loss. Now, evaporation loss is the 1% of the water flow to cooling tower. And drip loss is about 0.005% of cooling water flow. And blowdown loss is decided by the COC, cycle of concentration. The formula is the evaporation loss divided by cycle of concentration minus 1. So blowdown loss, why we give the makeup water? This blowdown loss, evaporative loss, evaporation loss, and deep loss take place. So ultimately, makeup is the require E for the evaporation loss, B for blowdown loss, and D for the deep loss. Now, what is COC? COC is the ratio of dissolved solid in circulating water to the dissolved solid in makeup water. Is the total COC. Or individual, if I measure the COC for the salt, COC for the particulate matter, then we will define the ratio of the dissolved salt or silica, suppose silica. So the ratio of the silica in the circulating water to the silica in the makeup water. That ratio is the COC for the silica. In this way, we can define the COC for cooling tower. Now, one thing you see the formula, the B is equal to E divided by COC minus 1. Now, if I increase the COC, really we can reduce the blowdown loss. If we can decrease the blowdown loss, we can reduce the makeup water. So by increasing the COC or cycle of concentration, we can decrease the, we can reduce the makeup water. That is the main fundamental target. So these are COC. You see the guideline. COC3, evaporative loss is 1.8, blowdown is 0.9. Is the base. COC4, evaporative loss is same, blowdown loss is coming down 0.6, and reduction is 11.11%. COC is 5, evaporative loss is same, but blowdown loss is coming down 4.45%. So we can go up to 7 or 8. 2% makeup water we can reduce, we can minimize. So generally we follow 5 to 6 COC, but by increasing the COC up to 7 or up to 8, we can minimize the cooling of the makeup water, and we can minimize the water consumption. The first step. Second step is the wastewater retreatment, recycling and reuse. First, we have to know how the water is polluted, contaminated by dissolved solid in wastewater, by oily wastewater, and high suspended solid water, wastewater. By this way, water is contaminated. Now you see, blow down, bottom ash and fly ash, wait, 0% ash recovery. Total plant raw water requirement is 4878, and only ash water requirement is 1570. Now come to the third point, bottom ash, fly ash, wait, and 70% ash recovery. Okay, and the total raw water demand has been coming down 3651. So by using the ash water recovery, we can reduce the total raw water requirement. Is the main fundamental idea. And next is the air-cooled condenser. By using the air-cooled condenser, the water will come down to 2.6422, and it will be about 0.6 per cubic meter per hour per megawatt. It will be coming down. Similarly, dry bottom furnace. We use the wet bottom furnace by water. We make the slurry and then we dispose to as pond or as dike area. But if you use a dry bottom as system, then also we can use the save the water for the as water bottom as slurry, and we can reduce the water consumption. It will come down to 0.32 cubic meter per hour. This is the impact of dry bottom as and air-cooled condenser. This is the air-cooled condenser, where the steam goes to air-cooled condenser by air fan. By air fan, we cool down the steam and condense the steam. Now, this is the effluent treatment plant. Here we can use the effluent treatment plant. There's a ETP. ETP, we buy the clarifier. By use the clarifier, and clarifier we use the mainly the what are the particles are there, suspended particles are there. We by using some chemical, we make the large formation or large particles, and they are settled. They are settled in the clarifier. So here the clarifier by the COA, the flocculation, the coagulation, and then by the sedimentation, we can remove the total solids, suspended solid or dissolved solid from the contaminated water, and that water can be reused in as pond area further. So this is the ETP. The STP main objective is to stabilize the decomposable organic matter which are present in the soils and to produce the effluent and sludge, and that can be disposed, and the remaining the water can be used for the as pond or somewhere. You see, this is the circuit diagram of the STP. The 2A primary treatment and secondary treatment. These are the ultimate discharge. We add the chlorine and effluent and final disposal. So by this way, but STP, we can also control the air water pollution. These are pollution control board guideline. That part I don't want to explain clearly. Written there, you will get it from my presentation. So this is about my today's session. Thank you all. Is there any question? Anybody? Anybody, any question is there?
Participant, any question? If there is no question, then thank you very much, sir. You have very well explained all environmental aspect of thermal power plant, that is air pollution, water pollution, land pollution, and a participant will definitely benefited from your lecture.